I am Cameron, and my story began the moment I accidentally stumbled upon strange messages on my husband's phone. It was an ordinary evening, he was late at work, and I, trying to distract myself from anxious thoughts, was making tea when I noticed his forgotten smartphone on the kitchen table. The screen was unlocked, and the first message that caught my eye was written with unmistakable tenderness: "I miss you so much." These simple yet heartfelt words pierced my heart like a dagger. I kept reading, and each new line felt like another blow. They were arranging secret meetings in a hotel, exchanging sweet words, making plans for the future. We had met 2 years ago at a mutual friend's party. He was so charming, with an open smile and an infectious laugh. Our conversations lasted for hours. We talked about music, art, and our dreams of traveling the world. It felt as if the rest of the world ceased to exist when we were a year after we met. We got married. It was a beautiful celebration, filled with love and happiness in every moment. We traveled often, explored new places, and shared our experiences. We had a cozy home, always filled with warmth and understanding. I would cook his favorite meals, and on weekends, he would help me in the garden. We both believed our love would last forever. But gradually, something began to change. He started staying late at work more often, going on business trips, and when he came home, he was irritable and exhausted. I tried not to show my concern. I cooked his favorite meals and created a cozy atmosphere, but I could feel that something was off. Now, knowing the truth, I recalled countless details that had once slipped past my attention: unfamiliar scents on his clothes, strange late-night calls, hurried conversations on the phone when he thought I couldn't hear. Every time he came home later than usual, my heart would race, and the worst scenarios would flash through my mind. I couldn't understand what had gone wrong. We had such a beautiful life together. We made plans for the future, dreamed of having children, and talked about traveling across Europe. How could he trade all of that for a fleeting affair? Did he really not realize the pain he was causing me with his actions? In moments like these, I often found myself sitting in our bedroom, staring at old photographs where we looked so happy, trying to find the answer to the question: when did everything start to fall apart? Had I become too predictable? Or had he simply grown tired of family life? Or maybe this woman was truly special, special enough for him to risk our marriage just to be with her. These thoughts tormented me day and night. I stopped sleeping, constantly checking his phone and email, even though I knew deep down that it only made me feel worse. But I couldn't stop. It was as if I had turned into a detective, investigating my own husband. One evening, when he was late from work again, I decided to check his computer. What I found there shattered me even more: chat messages in a messenger app, photos of him with this woman, even plane tickets he had bought to meet her in another city. I sat in front of the computer screen, feeling tears drip onto the keyboard, unable to comprehend how the man I loved more than life itself could do this to us. How could he lie so cynically, look me in the eye, talk about love, while secretly planning meetings with another woman? At that moment, I realized I could no longer pretend that nothing was happening. I had to confront him, to hear the truth from his own lips, to understand what drove him to betray our love, our family, and everything we had built together over the years. I decided to wait for him to come home and have a serious conversation. But as I sat in the living room, staring at the door and anticipating his arrival, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, about how we first met, our early dates, our wedding, the dreams we once shared, and how all of it was now hanging by a thread because of his betrayal. Each breath felt heavier than the last, and my heart pounded so hard it seemed ready to burst out of my chest. I tried to stay calm, but inside me, a storm of emotions raged: anger, pain, resentment, disappointment, and, perhaps the most painful of all, a crushing sense of inadequacy. I remembered how we had chosen this house together, how we had renovated it side by side, planned every corner, laughed at our mishaps, and celebrated our small victories. All those moments now felt so distant and unreal, as if they belonged to another life, another Cameron, one who hadn't yet tasted the bitterness of betrayal. Instead of answering, I just stared at him, searching his face, his eyes, for any trace of remorse or even a flicker of awareness about what he had done, but his gaze remained calm and steady, as if he had nothing to do with the lies that now stood between. "Is something wrong?" he finally asked. I began, forcing my voice to stay as steady as possible, though a storm was already raging within me, ready to break free and destroy everything in its path like a merciless hurricane. "I know about your affair." For a moment, his face twisted, as though he couldn't believe what he had just heard, but then it quickly returned to that familiar look of mild confusion, a mask I now realized he had been wearing all along, hiding his true self, his real desires. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, taking a step toward me. But I instinctively stepped back, creating an invisible barrier between us, one that now felt impossible to cross. "Don't," I said, raising my hand in a stopping gesture. "Don't pretend. I know about your mistress, about your meetings at the hotel, about the plane tickets you bought to visit her in another city. I know everything." His shoulders sagged slightly, as if he were suddenly tired of keeping up this act, this illusion of a happy family life that had now collapsed like a house of cards under the weight of his lies and betrayal. "It's not what you think," he began, but I cut him off sharply. I didn't want to hear any excuses. No explanations could dull the pain that was now eating away at my heart like acid. "Don't," I repeated, my throat tightening with the threat of tears, though I fought to keep them from falling. "Don't lie to me again. I saw your messages, your photos, the sweet, passionate words you sent her, words you didn't even hesitate to write, never once thinking about how much they would hurt me." He said nothing, his gaze dropping to the floor. And in that silence, I heard more than any of his words ever could. "I don't understand how you could do this to me," I went on, my voice trembling under the weight of my emotions. "How could you betray our love, our promises, our family? Is that woman really worth destroying everything we built together over the years?" He lifted his eyes, and for the first time, I saw something new in them, fatigue, disappointment, maybe even regret, but it was too late for confessions or attempts to fix anything. "I don't know," he finally said. And those simple words hit me like a fresh wave of pain, because they carried a raw, helpless confusion, a lack of understanding about the damage he had caused, which somehow made his betrayal even more cruel and irreversible. In that moment, I realized that our life would never be the same again, that the man I had loved and trusted was not the person I thought he was. And now, I would have to learn how to live with this pain, this betrayal, and the shattered trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship, the very core of what made it meaningful. I looked at him, the man who had once been my world, my anchor, my love, and I couldn't believe that all of that was now gone, that the person I had known, loved, and considered my best friend and partner had been capable of such a betrayal. Now, standing before me was a stranger, someone whose presence weighed so heavily in the air around me that I could physically feel the pressure on my shoulders, like invisible chains dragging me down. I began again, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions still swirling inside me. "I always thought I knew you better than anyone in the world, that we were connected by some invisible threads that could never be broken. But now I realize how wrong I was, about you, about us, about what I thought was love." His face twisted in a painful grimace, as if my words were sharp arrows piercing his flesh, but I kept speaking, unable to stop, pouring out all the pain that had built up over these days filled with doubt and fear of the truth. "How could you?" I asked, though I already knew that no words of his could ever justify what he had done, the betrayal that would forever stand between us like a deep wound that would never fully heal. "I don't know," he replied, and there was such genuine confusion, such raw pain in his voice that for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the man I had once loved. But the vision disappeared as quickly as it came, like morning mist dissolving under the first rays of the sun. You don't know. I repeated with bitter irony, feeling the hot tears drip onto my trembling hands, clasped tightly in front of my chest, like a last defense against the pain threatening to consume me entirely. Maybe you think it's normal, I continued, my voice shaking with emotion, to betray someone who loves you with all their heart, someone who was willing to give you everything without holding back, someone who built a future with you, dreamed of children, of growing old together, hand in hand. He said nothing, his eyes cast down, and that silence spoke louder than any excuses he could have offered in his defense. You know, I went on, I always believed that love was something sacred, that it was built on trust, respect, and support. But now I realize that for you, it's just a game where you're willing to sacrifice the people who matter most for a fleeting thrill, for a moment of passion that you think will make you happy. At that moment, I knew our story was over, that the man I had loved and trusted was not the person I thought he was. And now, I would have to learn to live with this pain, with this betrayal, with the broken trust that, as I now understood, had been the very foundation of our relationship, the foundation without which everything else lost its meaning and value. I want you to pack your things and leave, I said, struggling to keep my voice calm while a storm raged inside me, one that could break free at any moment, tearing everything apart like a violent hurricane. I can't stay in the same house with you anymore, breathe the same air, pretend that nothing happened. His shoulders slumped slightly, as though he was finally weary of maintaining this facade, this illusion of a happy family life that had now crumbled like a house of cards under the weight of his lies and betrayal. I understand, he finally replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion and emptiness. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of pity for him, but I quickly pushed it away, realizing that feeling sorry for him now would be a betrayal of myself, of the woman I used to be, the Cameron who still believed in love, in loyalty, in something real and true. You have a week, I continued, each word dragging out of me like I was tearing pieces of myself away, pieces of the future we once shared. After that, I'll file for divorce. We'll start new lives, but apart, like strangers, like two people who once crossed paths only to go their separate ways forever. He nodded silently, and that small, wordless gesture seemed to mark the end of everything we once had, our late-night talks, our travels, our dreams, our plans, our love. It all now felt so distant and unreal, like a beautiful dream that had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a bitter aftertaste and an emptiness in my heart, an emptiness I feared would never be filled, no matter how hard I tried to move on and start a new life without him. After he silently nodded, agreeing to my terms, a heavy silence settled over the house, so thick it felt almost tangible, as if I could reach out and touch it. Each breath became a struggle, the air suddenly dense and sticky, like molasses. I watched him slowly climb the stairs to our bedroom, and every step he took, every creak of the wooden floorboards, cut through me like a sharp blade, leaving invisible wounds on my soul that, I now realized, would take a long time to heal. Perhaps they never truly would. Then, my gaze fell on his briefcase, lying on the coffee table, forgotten in his rush to escape upstairs. Something inside me stirred, an urge I couldn't suppress. I found myself walking over to it, unzipping it, and peering inside, fully aware that what I might discover could be something I wasn't ready to know. Inside, I found several folders filled with documents, important looking, yet unmarked, offering no clue about their contents. As I flipped through the pages, my heart began to race, and my breathing grew unsteady. These papers were clearly connected to his work, but there was something else, something more personal, more secretive, and, as I instinctively felt, far more dangerous. In one of the folders, I found a set of photographs, pictures of my husband with a group of strangers I didn't recognize. The shots were clearly taken in secret, as if someone had been watching him. It didn't take long to notice a pattern. The meetings captured in these images happened in different places and at different times, but there was an undeniable sense of careful planning behind each one, they were anything but random. Another photograph showed him standing in a dark alley, talking to a man who looked unsettlingly suspicious. Though the man's face was obscured by shadows, something about his posture, the way he held himself, sent a cold shiver down my spine, a wave of dread spreading through me, making my heart pound harder. In a second folder, I uncovered a series of hotel receipts, none of which seemed related to his official business trips. As I scanned through them, my breathing grew shallow, my hands shaking at the realization that these were from the same hotels where I now knew he had met his mistress. But what broke me even more were the dates. Some of them coincided with nights when he had been at home with me, holding me close, whispering words of love, promising loyalty, while secretly planning his next betrayal. The third folder contained several strange documents, financial reports filled with codes, numbers, and abbreviations that I couldn't decipher. But something about them felt off. These weren't ordinary business transactions, they hinted at something far more serious, perhaps even illegal. As I read through the papers, my heart suddenly stopped, then resumed beating so violently it felt like it might burst from my chest. It became clear that this wasn't just about his affair, it was about something much bigger, something dangerous. These documents suggested a hidden side of his life, one that didn't just threaten our marriage but could impact the lives of others, people who seemed unknowingly caught up in a perilous game where the stakes were impossibly high and the consequences catastrophic. Then I heard it, the soft thud of our bedroom door closing upstairs. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing closer. He was coming back, for the briefcase. I had only seconds to decide, put everything back, pretend I had found nothing, or dig deeper, keep searching for the truth, no matter how dark or terrifying it might be. My hands moved swiftly, closing the briefcase and placing it exactly where I'd found it. I took a few deep breaths, forcing myself to steady the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. Because now I knew, my life would never be the same again. The man I had loved and trusted wasn't just a cheater. He was entangled in something far more complex and dangerous than I could have ever imagined. And now, I wasn't just a woman betrayed, I was a woman standing at the edge of a dark, twisting story that was only beginning, one that could unravel lives and expose secrets far beyond my own broken heart. When I heard his footsteps on the stairs, my heart started racing again, and my hands trembled uncontrollably, but I forced myself to stay calm, even though a storm of emotions raged inside me, threatening to swallow me whole, like a powerful ocean tide crashing onto a defenseless shore. He came downstairs, grabbed his briefcase without even looking at me, and headed for the door, as if everything that had just happened was nothing more than an unpleasant formality, something to get over with quickly so he could return to his secret life, full of intrigue and betrayal. Just before opening the door, he stopped and said, "I'll leave in a week, as we agreed. Until then, I'll stay at a hotel." His voice was so calm, so indifferent, that it only strengthened my resolve to uncover the full truth about his life, to find out what secrets he was hiding from me and from the rest of the world. When he left, I was alone in the house, but it no longer felt like our home. It suddenly seemed foreign, hostile, as if it had transformed from a safe haven into a trap, one filled with secrets and mysteries I needed to unravel in order to understand what was really happening to my husband, to our life, to the relationship that now felt as fragile and unstable as a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest breath of wind. I decided to start my own investigation by going through the documents I had found in his briefcase. I knew it could be dangerous, that I might discover things I'd rather not know, but curiosity and the burning need for the truth were too strong to resist. I couldn't stop myself, as if I were hypnotized by this dark secret that had now become the center of my life, consuming my thoughts and emotions. The first thing I focused on was the financial reports, filled with strange codes and abbreviations. As I began to analyze them, my heart suddenly froze at an unexpected realization. These documents clearly pointed to illegal financial operations, possibly even money laundering. It explains so much: his frequent business trips, the late nights at work, the sudden changes in his behavior, all the suspicious, inexplicable moments that had been piling up for weeks. In one report, I found a reference to a company registered to an offshore account. When I searched for information about this firm online, my breathing became shallow. What I uncovered left me stunned. This company was linked to several major scandals involving fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. It was then that I started to grasp the terrifying truth: my husband might be caught up in something far more dangerous than an affair. He seemed to be involved in a scheme that could not only destroy our lives but also have serious legal consequences for everyone entangled in it. Another report listed a series of meetings in different cities. When I compared the dates of these meetings to his business trips, my heart pounded faster. These gatherings clearly had nothing to do with his official work. They were part of some parallel activity, something far more dangerous and illegal than I had ever imagined. In the third folder, I found a series of unsettling photographs, my husband standing alongside people I didn't recognize. The pictures were clearly taken in secret, as though someone had been watching him. I quickly noticed a pattern: all these meetings happened in different locations, at different times, but they all shared one thing in common: they weren't coincidental. Each one was meticulously planned. One photograph showed him in a dark alley, speaking with a man who looked deeply suspicious. Though the man's face was hidden in shadow, something about his posture, the way he held himself, made me shudder. An inexplicable sense of dread washed over me, and I felt my heart pounding louder, faster. In another folder, I discovered several hotel receipts, none of which were tied to his official business trips. As I flipped through them, my breathing grew ragged, my hands trembling at what I saw. These receipts were from the very same hotels where he had met his mistress, but what shattered me even more were the dates. Some of them were from nights when I knew for certain he was at home with me, lying beside me, holding me, speaking of love and promising loyalty, while, in reality, he had already been planning his next betrayal. The final folder held more unsettling documents, financial statements filled with cryptic codes, numbers, and abbreviations. These weren't normal business transactions. They hinted at something darker, something more dangerous, suggesting deals that were far from legal. As I read through them, my heart once again stopped, then slammed against my ribcage with such force that I thought it might break free. It became clear: this wasn't just about his infidelity. It was about something far more sinister. These papers pointed to a hidden side of his life, one that didn't just endanger our marriage but could destroy the lives of others. People who, I now realized, were entangled in a deadly game, one with impossibly high stakes and consequences that could be catastrophic for everyone involved. And then, I heard it. The soft thud of the bedroom door upstairs. His footsteps echoed down the hall. He was coming back for the briefcase. I had only seconds to decide: put everything back and pretend I'd seen nothing, or keep digging for the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. My hands moved quickly, closing the briefcase and placing it exactly where I found it. I took a deep breath, then another, forcing myself to stay calm and clear-headed. Because one thing was certain now: my life would never be the same again. The man I loved wasn't just a liar or a cheater. He was part of something far bigger, far more dangerous, than I could have ever imagined. And now, I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was standing at the edge of a dark, tangled story that was only beginning, one that could unravel lives and expose secrets I wasn't sure I was ready to face. At that moment, I heard the phone ring. When I looked at the screen, my heart froze at the unexpected revelation. The call was from the man my husband had met in that dark alley. I hesitated for only a second before deciding to answer, realizing this might be my only chance to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it was. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice as steady as possible. though a storm of emotions raged within me, ready to break free, like a destructive hurricane, prepared to sweep away everything in its path. "Is this Cameron?" asked a low, hoarse voice, filled with such confidence and authority that, for a moment, fear gripped me. But I quickly pulled myself together, knowing this was my opportunity, my chance to finally hear the truth I had been chasing for so long. "Yes, this is me," I replied, my breathing uneven from a mixture of anxiety and fear, though I struggled to sound calm, refusing to let my emotions betray me. "I know you know about your husband," the man said, his words striking me like a bolt of lightning, each syllable a painful shock, making my heart pound harder with the sudden realization that this situation was far more complex and dangerous than I had ever imagined. "He's been working for us for several years now," the voice continued, each word slicing through the fragile reality I thought I knew, shattering the image of my life, my marriage. "And we won't let anyone, not even his wife, get in the way of our plans." In that moment, it became terrifyingly clear, I was caught up in something far more serious than an affair or financial fraud. My husband was part of a much larger operation, perhaps even a spy game, where the stakes were unimaginably high, and my life was now at very real risk. "What do you want?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "We want you to forget everything you found out," he said, his voice so calm, so commanding, that a fresh wave of fear rippled through me. But I didn't waver, because now I knew the only way forward was to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. "If you don't want your life to become a living nightmare," he added, and those words struck me like a thunderclap, sharp, sudden, and searing with the knowledge that this was no longer just a story of betrayal. This was something much darker, something deadly. In that moment, I realized I had only one option: I had to go to the police. I had to protect myself, and others, from this dangerous organization that, I now understood, would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. I quickly dialed the police, recounting everything I knew, handing over the documents I'd found in my husband's briefcase. I was fully aware that this could put my life in danger, but I also knew it was the right thing to do. I had to stop these people before they could hurt anyone else, before they could destroy more families, more women who, like me, had unknowingly found themselves trapped in a web of lies. A few hours later, the police launched an operation, arresting everyone involved in this dangerous organization, including my husband. As it turned out, he had been working for them for years, gathering confidential information and passing it along for large sums of money. When I gave my statement to the investigators, when I saw my husband through the glass of the interrogation room, I felt an unexpected sense of relief, like a massive weight had finally lifted from my shoulders. It was as though, for the first time, I saw him for who he truly was, not the loving husband, not the caring partner, but a traitor, a spy, a man willing to sacrifice everything he had for money and power. After the interrogation, as I stepped out of the police station, the crisp spring air hit my face like a cold shower, snapping me out of the nightmare I had been living in for months. It was then that I realized, my life would start over now. I would have to learn to live without the man I once loved, without the illusion of a marriage I thought was real. On my way home, I watched the city awaken, the people rushing about their day, the cars moving along their routes, and it suddenly struck me, each of them had their own life, their own secrets and struggles, their own joys and sorrows. And I had a right to a new life too. A new beginning. A new happiness. A new love. When I returned to the house, a place that now felt cold and unfamiliar, frozen in time, waiting for the inevitable changes, I began packing my things. I was preparing to move into a new apartment my friends had helped me find, knowing there was no longer a place for me in this house, no room for the memories, the lies, or the life I once shared with a man I no longer recognized. Every item I placed in a box tugged at the past, photos on the walls, books on the shelves, dishes in the cabinets. Each piece was a fragment of our shared history, one that now felt distant and unreal, like a beautiful dream that had dissolved into nothing but a bitter aftertaste and an emptiness in my heart. Yet, alongside that emptiness, there was something else, something unexpected. Relief. As if the unbearable weight I had been carrying had finally fallen away. As if I was finally seeing the world for what it really was, without illusions, without blind faith. Now, I understand, this story changed me forever. I will never again be the naive woman who blindly believed every word, who ignored the obvious signs of betrayal and deceit. But I also know that this trial has made me stronger. I've learned to trust my instincts. And I will never again let anyone manipulate me, or use me for their own selfish gain.